our next discussion is to be on regions, the regional concept. Now, regions are an important part of geography. Defining areas and defining how they can be used. Now, regions are generally the images, characteristics, and generalizations of an area. Geographers try to explain and define regions. And there are many different ways this can be done. How it's used, how it's there, geographic particular territories, comparison to other areas, a specific set of specific sets of coordinates and so forth. But essentially, a region is designed to summarize the many variations and details of a particular area. Regions are defined by unifying characteristics that can help overlap with other characteristics. And because there are different ways to define areas, regions often overlap. And one specific area, one specific locality can be part of many different regions. Again, depending on how these areas are being defined. One thing about a region is it has to have location. Specific area. This is usually specified by names like the South or the Midwest or the Middle East. They have spatial extent. As they extend over a certain area. They do have boundaries. Some of these boundaries are sometimes more amorphous or more porous than others, but they do have boundaries. They have an extent to how far they go. And they can either be formal or functional. Now, since different things are being defined, a region can have several different boundaries. Several different localities be part of the same area. For example, Texas can be defined as part of the South, but also as part of the West. Texas can be defined as South, the West, also part of Tornado Alley, also part of the Oil Belt, also part of the Gulf Coast. Because there are several different characteristics it has, and those common characteristics it has with its neighbors can make it part of several different regions. Now, regions can be defined by natural characteristics. Vegetation, soil, geology, minerals, water, elevation. Natural characteristics. But again, it doesn't have to be defined that way. It can be defined by population characteristics, just another way to define a region. Population characteristics, how many people living in a particular area, by religion, by ethnicity, by wealth, by level of education, by accents, even by how words are even used. For example, the South is generally known as the Coke Belt by linguists because they define how do you define any kind of generic carbonated beverage. In the South, generally it's a Coke. So they'll say, here, do you want a Coke? Yeah, I'll have a Pepsi or Dr. Pepper. Because those are all in the Coke category, and that's generally something that's used in the South. But up north, Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, they'll say pop lot of areas like California in the West and New England will say soda. New Orleans will say cold drink. Another way you can find population characteristics is by the proximity to other things, like how close they are to certain features or characteristics, or even say um, what their favorite sports teams are. In Texas, it's all the Cowboys. Oklahoma, all Cowboys. We go to Missouri, split between it's go to eastern Kansas and western Missouri. It's all the Chiefs. Florida, all the Miami Dolphins, and so forth. The demographics, religion, language, economics, politics. Red state versus blue state. That's another way you can find a region. Now, there's between formal regions, functional regions, is with a formal region, areas are essentially uniform throughout, or a limited combination of physical and cultural features. Limited combination of features. There's a region defined basically by one thing, by, say, location or a specific set of coordinates, or specifically by, say, red state or blue state. Functional regions Functional regions are spatial systems defined by interactions that give it a dynamic organizational basis. Boundaries are constant as long as the conditions in the region remain constant. That is, for example, the functional region could be proximity to certain kinds of grocery stores, certain kinds of grocery store chains. Example here in Arkansas and portions of east Texas, it's the Berkshire's grocery stores. Um, and this whole region that it occupies, East Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, even on into Mississippi, portions of Oklahoma, that whole area can be defined as a functional region. It's how close people are to particular Berkshire's locations. And there are a lot of local grocery store chains. Those chains can define regions based on that, based on the proximity their people's proximity to those particular stores and their particular locations. Um, but again, those regions can change. You can add more stores. You can expand its territory. You can contract it by closing stores. Or chain gets bought out by a larger chain. Suddenly, that particular region doesn't exist, or it's expanded greatly because you're changing the definition of it. Now, dynamic regions, that's an area defined by uh, finding an area by weather and climate, and it can lead to rapidly shifting boundaries as air masses, temperatures, and precipitation patterns change. Um, Example, an entire area affected by a storm system or a storm watch or warning that can be defined as a region but those regions are formed and change and move around within just a matter of a few hours. But no matter how regions are defined, it only shows a part of reality, not all of it. It doesn't show all the characteristics or the trait. It's just simply a way of looking at one or two characteristics and seeing how it interacts with within a region, within a particular area, and with the neighboring regions. It's simply a tool of simply looking at one particular part of the world, one particular aspect of the world, just seeing how it works, see how it's used, how it's defined, and how people use it. That's basic regions.